Hey there guys, it's Metro and we are back, and today we're going to get through some of my reactions that are video worthy, I think. We did a lot of this on the live stream, but I have a lot to say and I want to kind of compact all of that and leave a comment section for you guys to discuss it kind of more specifically. So if you guys didn't see, Blood Death Knight is getting massive changes. It looks like every class is, to be honest. I don't really even pay attention to other classes right now, but all the talk I've seen so far indicates that. They do have a talent tree thing kind of mocked up here on Wowhead. We will take a look at just what it says on the patch notes, but I think the talent tree might be important too. So let's read this because this is kind of them explaining what their goals are for Blood, and that's important to understand from their perspective. Going into Midnight, we had a few pain points with Blood Death Knight that we were looking to address. On the initial pull, Blood has an incredibly long ramp-up time to get both their defenses rolling, but also their offensive power. Now, I think right out of the gate, this is true. I agree with this. This is like, just fact, I think. But I would not call it incredibly long. We're talking about like 2 globals, really. So I don't know. I'm sure other specs have problems like that for their offensive power. I think the big issue is their defensive power. They have only effectively one talent that can be used out of combat that helped them, and that was Rune Tap, right? Rune Tap, that's the one that reduces the damage taken. Now that talent seems to be gone, at least at the time of me making this video. I don't know what's going to actually happen with a talent like that. Maybe it becomes a baseline spell. At one point, Rune Tap was a baseline spell, and Warlord's a Drainer was a baseline spell. But it seems like they're not going to bring it anywhere else because of what they say in this article. But I want to say that the incredibly long ramp up time and much of what they're about to comment on here is part of why Blood Death Knight is fun. People constantly ask me, if you could change anything for Blood Death Knight in the alpha, what would you change? Like going into the next expansion, what would you change? My answer is always the same. I don't want anything to change. I really like it right now. And on top of that, I got used to it. I don't want anything to change. They're changing add-ons to a degree that I'm actually like legitimately scared that I'm going to regress heavily without some of the options I've had. And they're changing the class to such a degree that both of these things together make me feel like I'm going backwards heavily. I don't want that. Like, I played the game for 21 years now. I don't want to feel that way after the 21st year. You know what I mean? This is not good for me, and I don't think it's good for the game. But I think if you're brand new to the spec, you might like what they're doing, and I think that's what they're trying to do. Is they're trying to get more people in the tanks roles and maybe in the role of Blood Death Knight in general. So I don't know. I don't like that, and I just think in general, it wasn't broken to a degree that it couldn't be fixed, and now it feels like they're trying to manipulate what we have access to fix something that wasn't really that big of a problem anyway. Anyway, the main culprit is due to how we turned Bone Shield into a damage throughput resource because of the existence of Shattering Bone and Insatiable Blade. And yeah, they did that. Okay. Now that was a really cool thing because it was a small trickle in addition. Like at first, yeah, Insatiable Blade was the main thing. That was a Shadowlands legendary. I believe that was the first time that existed. And then they added Shattering Bone and Dragonflight. And that seemed like a really cool idea because there was a lot of powerful or a lot of like mediocre cooldowns that now became powerful. And so all of that together really culminated into the War Within, where we had this very active, Bone Shield style. And this was why I played Deathbringer, because it really encouraged Bone Shield usage to be like, it was like a very kind of permanent part of your kit. And I was always kind of bad at managing Bone Shield as it was. If you go back to Shadowlands version of me, you might ask me, will you take Tombstone? And I would say never. I will not take Tombstone no matter what, even though we had the legendary at the time, because I thought managing Bone Shield was my biggest weakness, and having a talent or a spell or whatever that would remove Bone Shield instead of add it was going to make that way harder. Then they ultimately added the functionality where or Dancing Rune Weapon gave you Bone Shield 2, and then Death Grip gave you Bone Shield. Like, it became like a non-factor eventually. You know what I mean? To the point now where I think it's actually really good, and now we're going to start from scratch again. I don't like it. I'm sure the output will be great, and it could be better than it is right now. But it's done, I think, for the wrong reasons. Let's keep reading. Going into Midnight, we have removed Shattering Bone and redistributed its power into Blood's baseline damage abilities for a more consistent throughput that doesn't require all the hoops to jump through to start dealing damage. And I said this on stream the second I read that comment. The hoops are what is making it fun. I think the things about Blood that are intrinsically fun, now those, don't only pertain to doing good damage and maximizing Bone Shield and Death Strike, but it's like most of it, right? I really think it is. I really think what makes it fun is those things. And without those, it's going to be a lot less fun, I think. It's going to be a lot more passive. That's actually what they want, and they effectively say that. So we'll see. I think it's still going to be fun. I'm going to still play it, but it's just like, it's kind of going the wrong direction in my eyes. Anyway, on the topic of Bone Shield, we've also reduced the number of abilities that deduct from it, such as Tombstone and Bone Storm. As a tank, you have a lot of things to consider in your role, and adding what was essentially a third resource to spend felt like it was slightly too much. I don't know what the third resource thing is. Like, what do you mean? What's the second one? Anyway, not to say we can't explore this design in the future, but we will need to be much more cautious and deliberate with these ability designs to ensure it's not encroaching on the already existing resource system of Death Knights. The other notable change for Blood is focused on making them more reliable in high-end Mythic Plus keys. Blood historically, outside of the very strong Sepulchre of the first one tier set, has been great at low to mid-level keys, but started to fall off at higher-end keys where their Death Strike healing can't overcome the damage they start to take. To alleviate some of this, we have made a pass on Death Strike and all its modifiers to reduce its overall healing, but at the same time, we've redistributed that power into their baseline defensives, talents, and Bone Shield. The goal being to make their damage intake a little more predictable at higher keys and prevent them from falling over before they can start to get their other defensives ready. That's falling over before that. We love that Blood has carved a niche for itself as the self-sufficient tank. Thank God they're saying this. Thank God they're saying this out loud. And we don't want that to change. We look forward to hearing your feedback as the above changes, as well as the other changes not mentioned as we continue into alpha and beyond. And so right out of the gate, like the things that they're saying are, and I think the things that they're addressing are pertaining to almost no one. This is my biggest issue. It's like, okay, right now there's very, very few people playing Blood Death Knight, so it's really hard to actually look at the stats on this. But there's like, I'm at a level that I'm at like almost the top percentile of Blood Death Knight, and I've not ran into this issue. You know what I mean? Like, as we're doing 17s, it's very unlikely that you get one shot. I don't know where this like happens. I guess it must happen. I don't. I think it's just compared to Prot Warrior or tanks that are more passive mitigation focused, it looks bad. But if you only had Blood, like if there was only the one tank spec in the whole game, you would not even think about this being a thing. You would just think about shifting your priority on your character to avoid it, right? Because that's what I do. I prioritize health, versatility, and stability in my opening globals. That's what I do as a character, as a player, as a person who plays Blood. The other people who don't, like who have played other tanks copiously and then come to Blood, they can't wrap their head around that. Like, and they don't want it to be that way. They're like, that's why I don't like Blood. I don't like getting one shot. It's like, well, yeah, but you have plenty of options to help mitigate that. And that's part of the skill expression. That's why the spec is so interesting, right? So it's like the idea here that they are, what was the exact quote? Historically has been great at low to mid-level keys. I don't even think it is, because then all tanks can do what Blood does there. But started to fall off at higher end keys where their Death Strike's healing can't overcome the damage they start to take. That's why you have Bone Shield. Or that's why you have Blood Shield. You know what I mean? It's like, that. What do you mean? That's like already part of the kit. I just don't really see this as a reason to change. But anyway, they are going to change, and we'll see if it's better. But we have the Apex talent announcements for every spec in the game, I think. So here are they. Well, the first one, you can see it on the mock-up here. But yeah, there's a lot. Them leading with this is not how I came to it, okay? In fact, let's just go here for a second, okay? I'm just going to read these to you. You will notice significant changes here, okay? I'm not like super, super well-versed in every minutia of the spec. You guys know that. I'm very much a feel player. But you're going to notice a lot of changes, even as somebody like me. Summons a rune weapon for 12 seconds that mirrors your melee attacks, and while active, you have 20% parry. 35% parry is what it says in the War Within. Big nerf there already. Doesn't say anything about its cooldown. I mean, it has the duration, but it doesn't have anything about the cooldown on the talent there. Dancing Rune Weapon's cooldown is reduced by 30 seconds and now generates 5 bone shields. And I'm pretty sure it's 15 seconds, generates 5 bone shields, and Insatiable Blade is the thing that makes its cooldown lowered, right? So they are lowering the cooldown with the talent, but like, what is the overall base cooldown going to be? I don't know. It's just going to be static. We know that much. Everlasting Bond summons 1 additional copy of Dancing Rune Weapon and increases the duration by 4 seconds, which I think was 2 seconds. And I guess that's it, right? So, okay, so what else are they changing? So now we have the Apex talents, and these are crucial. Like, all of this is Dancing Rune Weapon focused, I think, overall, okay? Dancing Rune Weapon is active. Your parry, and when you parry, you have a chance to make your next hard strike free and deal 150% increased damage. Okay, what's one way to get more parry? Critical strike. So, like, I don't know. Are they thinking about that? Are they trying to get people to build more offensively? I don't really know what they're going for. But that's a really interesting talent. I mean, obviously, free hard strike and more damage is nice. But it feels like we're suddenly going to start being in this weird situation where Blood Boil and Hard Strike are like your main globals that you press and nothing else. Because you kind of don't, like, you lost, like, you're losing a ton of globals here. Like, very, very clearly, you're losing a lot. Anyway, for each Dancing Rune Weapon active, your damage is increased by 4/8%. This is a 2-point talent. That's why it's 4/8. And your damage taken is reduced by 2/4%. Now, whenever you see something like this tells you that there's going to be more than one Dancing Rune Weapon, right? So we already have 2. That there's a talent interaction for it. You're going to have 2 immediately. So that seems to indicate that whenever you press the spell, you're going to have a 16% Dancing Rune Weapon buff for offense and an 8% Dancing Rune Weapon buff for defense. Okay? So they reduced the parry by 15%. They took away the uptime of it in that way. But is it a net gain? Probably. I mean, probably is a net gain. Obviously, offense, it's a gigantic gain. I mean, that's ridiculous. But in terms of defense, having a passive mitigation attached to the talent and the spell in general is actually kind of interesting. But considering we know we're losing uptime on it, that could be negative over the course of the run, right? But we are actually going to have a final Apex talent here that might change all that. When you consume a rune, you have a chance to call a Dancing Rune Weapon to your aid for 6 seconds. This single talent point may be the most important for any spec in the game, honestly. It will certainly be the most important for Blood. And when I mean most important, I mean the tuning of it. How often this actually happens is going to determine whether or not the spec is strong. And I think it's making it easy to tune and, more straightforward. Because if you have 100% uptime on Dancing Rune Weapon, like at least 1 up 100% of the time, then all of a sudden the spec is a lot different, right? But what are the odds of it? And what are the odds of having 5 up or something like that, Because if you can have 5 up, then all of a sudden we're talking about a ridiculous damage and physical damage or whatever damage reduction in general, you know what I mean? It's a really interesting thing. I just don't know it's going to work out. Like, I really feel like it's going to come down to how it's tuned. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, there's a lot of other talents that we need to talk about. Deadly Reach. Death Strike hits an additional 2 enemies. I believe this was part of Season 2 set bonus, right? So is this a pure offensive thing? I think this is a pure offensive thing. New talent, Lifeblood. Death Strike heals for an additional 20% of its healing over 5 seconds. This was one of the first things I saw when I looked at the talent tree. And immediately I thought, wow, that's a ridiculous buff. But now you realize that they are nerfing all the other stuff. So it's actually them taking that power away from the upfront Death Strike and adding it over time. I can easily see this being our top HPS. Because 20% of the healing over 5 seconds, a lot of times when you Death Strike, it's pure overhealing. Like, well, almost always. Because you're not even in danger. A lot of times you use it just for offense. But let's just say the times you use it when you're in danger, somewhat dangerous, you almost always overheal, okay? And that's why Bone Shield is valuable. But now it's like actually going to probably be way less likely that you overheal, and you're going to have a ticking hot on you basically. That's pretty good. Like that's pretty good actually. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden that's a pretty big change. So that would be very interesting to see and how that plays into, you know, the overall bulk of the spec. Anyway, now they made a whole, like, yeah, this all was the stuff that they removed, right? So they removed Tombstone, Bone Storm, Shattering Bone, and whatever else was there. When you cast Dancing Rune Weapon, you become enveloped in a blood mist that surrounds you for 8 seconds, increasing your parry by an additional 5%. Deals shadow damage every 1 second to enemies within 10 yards. Each time it deals damage, you gain 2 runic power up to a maximum of 10, and deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. So basically another offensive buff. This is the Venthyr Covenant ability from Shadowlands, which I would have recommended always be in the game. And it now just procs from Dancing Rune Weapon usage, so that's interesting. Another theme you're going to see, I think, with the class changes is them pruning. A lot of pruning, I think, really going on here. Anyway, we have another new talent, Boiling Point. Heartstrike has a chance to make your next Blood Boil empowered, dealing 50% increased damage and echoing. So I think that means a second use of it, right? No matter what. So, I mean, does that factor into things like hemostasis? Hemostasis still seems to exist. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. It still increases the healing of it, you know what I mean? So I don't know. Like, these are interesting interactions. But some of this stuff makes me think that we're going to be really relying on Blood Boil. Like, now that Shattering Bone is gone, Blood Boil is going to be... Like, I could already foresee this, right? You guys ever see a class where, like, over 50% of their damage is one thing, right? People, like, make fun of that. They're like, lol, Paladin did 50% of their damage with Divine Storm, right? That's going to be Blood. 50% of your damage is going to be Blood Boil now. It seems like... I mean, that and Heartstrike are going to probably be, like, 75% of your damage, I would imagine. So, is that good? I don't know. They also, I think that's still to come. Oh, maybe it was in like the regular, there's like a Death Knight. Yeah, okay. Oh yeah, so we missed this part. Death Strike heals reduced to 20% of all damage taken was 25. So that's not that big of a nerf, but it will add up. Death and Decay's damage has been increased by 130%. That's a pretty big buff, so that's going to be probably a big deal for Blood. Gigantic nerf to Lichborn. The spell's basically removed. Unholy Endurance doesn't give it damage reduction anymore. That is so tragic. I honestly think that is a Death Knight DPS or PvP thing that is being forced upon Blood now. So we basically lost a whole CD. Anyway, back to this. We have, next up, we did Boiling Point. Next up, we have Plague Infusion. Your Blood Plague critical hits have a chance to reduce the cooldown of your Blood Boil by 0.25 seconds. So I don't know what the chance is. But again, you're going to have Blood Plague on many targets. So think about this. In this situation with, say, 10 targets near you, it could literally make Blood Plague free. Like, I don't know. Like, what, you know, the cooldown is not long as it is. What is it, like 2 seconds or something like that? It's very short. So it's just going to constantly, as long as you have a lot of crit, it's almost like they're trying to turn us into you stack crit. But it does sound like you're going to literally Blood Plague on cooldown. Or Blood Boil on cooldown. Which is strange. But anyway. When Blood Mist ends, it deals shadow damage to 8 enemies, healing you for 15% of that damage dealt. The damage is increased by 2% for every 1 runic power spent. I hate that talent. Absolutely hate that talent. This is going to be another one where if it's powerful and everybody but me takes it, there are going to be a lot of stream comments because I will not be taking this talent. It would really have to be like you just get it by accident. Like it's not in any way a choice for me to actually have that talent. I cannot stand a talent like that, honestly, that encourages you to really do a lot of things inside a small window. And this is why I don't play Sandland in the first place. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, Consumption has been redesigned and is now an Empower ability. Empower the runes in your weapon, reducing the damage you take over the duration and unleashing a devastating attack. So an Empower ability as a tank, that's kind of crazy. Unleashing a devastating attack that deals shadow damage and consumes up to 75% of your Blood Plague instantly. I don't know what that means. I've been thinking about this. We talked about it a ton on the stream. What does it mean to have your Blood Plague consumed? I don't know what that means. So you guys want to speculate, or maybe by the time you guys listen to this, you'll already know. Feel free to comment down below. Anyway, Insatiable Blade has been updated. Dancing Rune Weapon's cooldown is reduced by 30 seconds. So that's just, we already talked about that. That's basically changing the whole talent and removing the Dancing Rune Weapon CDR part, which I absolutely adored. Heartbreaker no longer grants extra runic power from Dancing Rune Weapons. That's kind of sad, but I think they needed to do that because of all the free Heartbreaker and all the extra Dancing Rune Weapons. A-Bomb Limb is back. Abomination Limb is now available as a choice node with Gorfine's Grasp, but no longer deals damage. So we have Sprout, an additional limb, pulling enemies further than 8 yards from you every 1 second. The same enemy can only be pulled once every 4 seconds. And then it is a choice node with Gorfine's Grasp, which you'll also see has the talent baked into it by default. So with freeing up a lot of these talents, I definitely can see us taking that a lot more now, which is good, perhaps. We'll see how that plays out once it, I mean, can you even pick stuff? Like, I don't know, there's no icons. So I don't even know that you can actually talent calculate, but it's there if you want to try. So yeah, Gorfine's Grasp is now the talent plus Gorfine's. Everlasting Bond duration increase reduced to 4 seconds, was 6 seconds. So we talked about that before. Oh yeah, actually I thought it was 2 seconds, but now it was reduced by 2 seconds, right? Voracious has been gutted. Voracious now increases Death Strike healing by 5%. Yeah, 5% and grants you 12% leech. I mean, that's still kind of cool, I guess. Bone Shield armor increased by 25%. That is, you know, again, them trying to make the passive mitigation more concrete. Improved Bone Shield now increases the maximum stacks of Bone Shield by 2. And I think, is that just like they got rid of the talent that did that? Because like that's the thing already, right? What was the talent that did that? I think they combined 2 talents. We looked at it on stream. Anyway, Blood Fortification now increases your base armor by 35%. So again, a lot of stuff like that going on. Carnage is like totally like it. Yeah, the talent here consumption is very interesting. If you guys haven't seen it, basically you're gonna, I assume, always want to let it charge up 3 times, and it's gonna do a lot of damage. I guess I'm not really sure because it just says 2,500. Obviously, there's a massive stat squish that's going on in this expansion, so I'm not sure how much that is supposed to be. But I would imagine, based on the word devastating attack, that it's gonna probably be one of your hardest hitting spells. And it also consumes 75% of the blood plague instantly. I don't know what that part means. Is it meant to be a detriment, or is it meant to do upfront damage and healing as well? It's possible, right? But as you see, up to 75% of your blood plague is rank 3, and while empowering, your damage taken is reduced by 15% for an additional 2 seconds after. I do not like how they are doing this, but I guess this is a hallmark of the empowered spells, where rank 1 is 5%, and an additional 8 seconds. I don't know what that means. Like, I don't want that. I don't want to have to be mathing out, should I use rank 1 or rank 3? I don't know. What do you guys think of that? I don't know. But anyway, that's pretty much it. And then all of these things are removed. All of these things are removed. Pretty crazy. I mean, we're talking about Blood Drinker, which is, I don't think anybody ever took that. But that's one active. Blood Tap, I don't think anybody ever took that, but that was one active. Bone Storm, obviously crucial. All of those interactions with Bone Shield and Shattering Bone are now gone. Mark of Blood, I didn't even know that existed. I actually forgot that was a thing. It was a choice node with Tombstone. I don't think a single person ever took that, right? I can't believe that was even in the game anymore. Anyway, so that's gone. That's another active, theoretically. Rune Tap seems to be gone. I would not be surprised if Rune Tap became base part of the kit, but the fact that they don't mention it does kind of scare me. I guess maybe it probably doesn't have a place now that they're trying to make passive mitigation easier. And then Shattering Bone and Tombstone gone. 2 of the most interesting and unique interactions any tank had. Pretty sad. I don't know. Like, first glance, I think this is worse. I don't have the problem that the people say is the problem. I do not have the problem with the passive mitigation. And I love the fact that you are bleeding, like you're on the knife's edge. You're on the edge of your seat constantly to try to, are you going to live or you're going to die? And this is what makes Blood Death Knight so fun and so interesting. So it sounds like they're nerfing that. But the only question is, how strong is Death Strike still going to remain? How strong is a talent like Lifeblood going to be? How strong are these new talents going to be? How powerful is Dancing Rune Weapon going to end up? Because if we are at a point where we are having 3 to 4 to 5 dancing rune weapons up at a given time, and you just look like you have a fucking army of things following you, take it all. I'm fine with that. That sounds so freaking cool. But I really worry after hearing and reading what is being said here that it's actually just going to be like, yeah, you're just going to have a better passive mitigation and rune weapon's going to be up like 100% of the time now maybe. But it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be interesting. You're not going to have multiple rune weapons proccing constantly. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows how it's going to play out? I'm probably not going to have access to the alpha. If I do, I will stream it, but I doubt I will. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Otherwise, I'm very excited for the future one way or the other. I have one more video coming on my thoughts on the midnight stuff. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching. We will see you guys soon. And there's going to still be a lot of Mythic Plus reviews coming this week as well.